wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
Welcome to Nourishing the Mother, featuring your hosts Bridget Wood and Julie Tenner.
Hello and welcome to Nourishing the Mother. I'm Bridget Wood.
And I'm Julie Tenner. And today's podcast is Burnt Out by Love, when being in service runs you into the ground.
Haven't we all been there?
Oh, so many times. Before we jump into that, we'd love to remind you to jump on to nourishingthemother.com.au and sign up to join our tribe, where once a week we will send you an email with links to everything we've put out in the world, and you can pick and choose during your week where you'd love to dive a little deeper. And sometimes we'll send you another email called a love letter, where we get a little bit more intimate than what we might otherwise on socials. So please jump on nourishingthemother.com.au and on the homepage, sign up to join our tribe. Burnt Out by Love. I actually got this title from a listener's email when we were writing backwards and forwards. I had said to her, because she had said, this is, where I'm at and this is what I found from your podcast. And I went back to her going, oh gosh, I love that term. I just love it. Burnt out by love, in terms of we can all put ourselves right back there or right into it or feel into it. I think as a term, it's absolutely perfect. So thank you to that beautiful listener. Where do you want to go with this podcast, Bridge?
God, it's just so big. And I think that the longer you're in motherhood and the longer you're in the service of motherhood, the more moments you can recall of finding yourself there. And also the more tools that you've employed to find your way out of it again. And the more clear we begin to get on what our own patterns are for feeling burnt out. Because by the time we get there, it's usually because we've quashed our own needs and not listened to what we wanted, and in desire to be of service, we have given away parts of ourselves and given away parts of the things that we really want in order to serve others. And so I think, just like, the universe expands and contracts, we have to get to these places within our motherhood, like any relationship, for us to regroup within ourselves and figure out, wow, like what's missing for me? What do I need? How can I, lean in more and grow the ways that I'm asking myself to grow, and not keep hitting this wall of exhaustion or resentment or frustration or incredible sadness because I've not listened along the way to what I truly need. So I do see it as purposeful, and I don't subscribe to the illusion that we can avoid these feelings of that in motherhood, because I think we there's so much stuff out there that will sell us an illusion. And I think one thing that we are deeply real about here is that everything serves us. We wouldn't be feeling emotions if they weren't purposeful for our evolution. The key is to use them as feedback, to learn what they're seeking to reveal to us, so that we can more consciously choose the path forward, so we don't become run by them. But it's not to demonize them, it's to see them as wisdom, a form of wisdom for us to learn from. So that's what I probably preface it with, is what we need to find, actually, the wisdom in the burnout and how it's speaking to us. Because sometimes our path forward will speak to us in these places of feeling burnt out, because it's when you're burnt out that you're forced to, really get clear on what you want.
Well, you're forced to dig deep, aren't you, in so many ways. It kind of does two things, doesn't it? One is that you have there's no buffer, that you are raw. Yeah. And so when you are raw, you meet the parts of yourself you hate. Yeah. And you find new parts of yourself you didn't know existed. Yeah. And you find strength often that you don't know existed. And sometimes I think you can also find greater depth in your relationship through that, because if you sometimes we feel like we have to do it all, we have to be everything all, and when we completely crumble, who comes in? How much does that bust our illusion that we have to be everything? Yeah. And so if if we can't consciously see how our partner shows up and steps up, sometimes we will
like burn ourselves down to be able
Get
to
sick.
Yeah.
Be not able to cope.
Yep.
So that we can let ourselves off that pedestal or that hook long enough for someone else to actually step in. And it might not look exactly the same to us, but it's also a reminder that someone else can do what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can be, like, particularly if you have a strong identity wrapped up in motherhood as service and that as your identity, it can be a brutal awakening, I think, too, to start to recognize that, our children can get their needs met and love in so many forms. It doesn't always have to be the form that we give it and the form that we judge as best. So I think that burnout can be purposeful for us to burn down our illusions as well.
Totally. Can you think of times when you were burnt out by love?
Yeah, I think definitely with my first, trying to meet every need before they were needs, and stop every feeling of trauma or pain or, that kind of needing to be on top of everything first and have read everything and have done all of the right things and just lost myself completely in that need to be everything and have thought through everything from my own pain of feeling like that was my job and that was, if I couldn't do all that, then who was I in this role? I definitely think getting caught up in the illusion of always having spaciousness. Certainly I have values around that, but being around my children 24/7 like I have been lately has made me face more edges of my motherhood than I've probably faced in a long time. Because when you're around anyone constantly, you're going to hit more rubbing kind of pain because that's human relationship. And so, I felt like that. And that's absolutely where I go, wow, like what do I need right now? What am I not willing to feel that's also landing me here? Because I think we all have kind of default coping mechanisms for how we get through stuff.
Yes.
Where we might manage things through trying to be even more busy or even more organized, or, it flicks off in anger when actually what's really deeply beneath there is a real need to cry or a real need to feel sadness that we're not giving presence to. I think that they can be wonderful, like red flags for us to go deeper into. And the less we can honor those red flags, the more our behavior and our feelings can descend into those places where we almost feel like we can't crawl out again, which I think that's what motherhood can do sometimes is you're in that desire to be of service, you lose your sovereignty, you lose your voice because you want so much to give your children.
Make it better.
Yeah, make it better or give them some ideal that you think is right for them or that you didn't get, or to shield them from something that you say is wrong in the world, which is ultimately the voids driving all of our values to consciously parent in some form. What about you?
Yeah, look, same. I can totally put myself back with number one, just the first, I think that first hitting of motherhood is freaking brutal because it doesn't matter how much you read, you can't ever really be prepared.
No.
And just that total scramble between the hypothetical parent that I desired to be and the screaming reality of where I found myself was really hard, and the berating between that gap. The self-punishment, the self-flagellation, the guilt, the shame, the spirals that went from there.
Yeah.
The exhaustion, the desire to give beyond what I had, what I felt like I had capacity for, but I had such strong drivers saying, if I don't do this, they will be damaged, that I would push myself beyond now where I would remotely expect myself to go. And I think that has ramifications. So where I might overly show up in motherhood, it then was disastrous in, I don't know, my body, in my relationship, in my health. So it would take from pockets. It's never just like a I don't know what the word is, but I can't just extract from myself.
Like a perpetually full cup that never runs out.
No, it's not like that. So, I think the idea of our life is to empower, as you and I have discussed, all 7 areas of our life. But if we're only focusing on one area of our life, the others will deteriorate. Unless we're willing to govern with some sort of awareness where that energy is moving and how it's all going, because everything is conservation, right? So I can certainly feel into it there. And I have such compassion for me back then, because I was 24 when I had my first child.
Yeah.
Like 24.
So young.
And none of my friends had kids. I was the only one and the first one. And I had not grown up with children. And I was very, very wounded in how I was running from my own parenting story and running into it in my own parenting. So I have such compassion for how I scrambled to find myself, but it did. And then baby number 2, I thought I would undo all of that pain by letting go of all of the bodies and voices that spoke the most strongly around me during that first journey, which, because I had no real family or friends, was professionals. And I felt to some extent a bit of a head fuck, because the head and the intellectual and the professionals would say one thing, but my heart and my body would feel another. And I would make myself twist, around that.
That's pretty hard.
Really hard. And so I was convinced by then I'd, parented, found my natural parenting and my people, and, had morphed into a different mother by the time I was pregnant with number 2. And so I went full hardcore attachment parenting, and I've spoken about this before, so I don't need to go into it, but the fallout of that was the giving of literally everything. There was no separation. There was no self without an attached baby. There was no part.
So your identity was essentially your baby had to be attached to you.
Totally. And was.
Yeah.
So this is the interesting thing with our beliefs, isn't it? Is our reality is literally the manifest of our beliefs.
Yes.
So I had created a reality in which there was no separation. So I couldn't have separation because there was none.
Totally contradicted your beliefs. So
and it was on a looping pattern, right? Yeah. So it was my reality. And I reinforced my reality, and it was my reality, and I reinforced my reality, and on we went. Yeah, right. Yeah. And it works until it doesn't.
And what was the point? Do you recall? Was there a big point for you where that just stopped working, or was it a slow erosion?
Look, I think it was probably, and not that I was as conscious of it back then or had permission back then. I think sometimes when we're in these really natural parenting, conscious parenting paradigms and gatherings, that it can be not okay, in fact taboo, to talk about any of the darkness and the resentment that comes with that style of parenting, which I think is such a dishonouring of self as well, because the resentment, the anger, the frustration, the desire for space is there for a reason.
Yes. Yeah, it's there to be listened to, not denied.
It is growth. Yeah. It is your higher self calling you and your child to a place of greater independence and self-worth. They are not separate. But I could not hear that. I could not see that. Yeah. And so I could see, again, taking away, like I look back at myself with photos then, and I had no time for my own care, my own self-care. Like I rocked around in tracksuits 24/7.
I can't imagine you rocking around in tracksuits.
I know. Because it wasn't really me. It was me with the belief that I wasn't worth creating the time, the space, the energy.
Or that didn't add any value to your children, so why would you do that?
Both, right? And I couldn't because there was no space. So again, looping pattern, right?
Yeah.
So I can completely, totally, and I loved it. Like I loved motherhood. I loved these children. I loved the consciousness and had total belief in where we were traveling on this path. But no sense of self, disconnection from body, disintegrating relationship.
I do wonder what, like in that intensity, what did your relationship look like then?
Oh, it looked really different. Really different. Honestly, when we talk about having affairs, I think my husband and I have probably had 3 affairs with each other so far because we are such different evolutions of ourselves in our relationship. But, as you and I know, we believe in long-term monogamous relationship, and I think you can have that. I don't think anyone is or isn't anything. It's all just growth.
Yeah.
But you got to be willing to face some hard shit in working that out.
And the longer you're with someone, the harder the more instances of that hard shit you face.
Totally. Yeah. And the dismantling of your own beliefs. So all that stuff that you have entangled in your identity that says, well, I turned out fucked up like this because my mother did that. So if I do that to my kids will turn out the same. Like so much disintegrating of myself to even get to the point. Anyway, I feel like I'm digressing from the topic.
I know I'm digressing you, but anyway.
No, it's good. I love a good digress. Anyway, so yes, I can completely. So what did my relationship look like? So it did look like date nights that were Netflix and a tub of ice cream. And it looked like, oh, well, I don't give a shit, so we just won't give a shit together and we'll just never really put any effort into our, our bodies, which is also not true because I was pretty fanatical on my fitness and health back then as well. So, but it looked different. It was still quite stringent rather than embodied. And I can see how I didn't show up in other areas. Anyway, so burnt out by love, yes. Finding myself in a rut, this child who wouldn't sleep through the night, who needed me so many times, who I was still breastfeeding. And I can remember this one night, was clinging onto co-sleeping and she was in bed between us and I was just dog tired. And instead of just feeding to sleep, as was our usual pattern, she was like climbing. She was still attached to my breast, but like walking her legs up my body, just fucking around.
Yeah, how annoying.
Oh, yeah. And I can literally remember lying in bed going, are you fucking serious? Like, here I am giving everything I've got and you're mucking around, like just go to sleep.
Yeah.
What am I doing this for if I'm not getting what I want out of this, which is more sleep?
Yeah. Yep.
So I can literally remember that moment and going, that's it. And Bridget, once I make up my mind, it's like a steam train. Get out of my way. And I can remember finding my congruence in that moment. There was no like, I was really angry that night and it wasn't okay. And I was like, nah, this isn't working anymore. And I know it's not working because I have more resentment for my child right now than I have love. And I know I'm in love with this child, but I hate it right now.
Yeah.
And that is not healthy for me, and that is not healthy for them, and that is not healthy for our dynamic, our family, my relationship. All these things are the most important things in my whole world to me. Yeah. I could see how it was now the enemy of that rather than the friend of that. And I can literally remember that moment and going, okay, right, what needs to change? And working out in my mind an action plan that I felt like I could show up for.
Yeah.
And so that looked like aware parenting, listening to tears, changing rooms so that she was separate. We had a floor bed back then, and slowly feed by feed, committing to she's staying in her bed and I'm going back to my bed. Just feed by feed. It wasn't bang, next night we're going to sleep through.
Yeah.
It was,
but you had a plan.
I'll show up for the 11 p.m. feed, and once she's sleeping through that, I'll show up for the 12 p.m. feed, and once she's sleeping through that, I'll show up for the 1:45 feed.
Yes.
Like I can literally remember this.
Yeah. That's big.
Yeah, right, it is. And you've got to be willing to negotiate in your mind. I'm willing to be on less sleep before I'm on more sleep.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard place to be when you are exhausted. It's a really hard place to be. But thank you, anger. I was fueled by anger.
Oh, man. And that's why anger is so purposeful.
Yeah. I had the energy because I was so fucking angry. Anyway, burnt out by love. So I could totally see that. And I can see how we can just choose to give up our own needs. Really what I want to do right now is this, but I won't, because what I should do is play with you and do this. And what I should do is be present. And what I should do is blah, blah, blah. And I still think that is a balance that every mother plays, consciously or unconsciously, because when I sit in circle with women that would not have the conversations that you and I have, they will all break down in tears about how much they are holding for their children.
Wow.
And I think it is probably not spoken about enough, that on some level we are all constantly dancing a line between what is them and what is us, and how much can I hold and how much can I be in service. And I just think unless we are really conscious of the dynamic that our children bring and of the learning that is in this situation for us, that we can get lost in the burnout of love. You know, and I think that looks like many different things. But I also think you don't have to get to burnout for things to change. It's the lesson with the feather and the brick that you can choose to listen to and dismantle the beliefs that hold you back from changing course. You don't have to get to the sledgehammer where you're raging at 2 o'clock in the morning because your child won't sleep, and when you cannot possibly have another person touch you because you are so touched out, and where you're so fucking angry at your partner that you can't even be in the same room without having a visceral reaction. You don't have to get there.
Yeah.
You can choose to interrupt earlier, but it requires, I do think it's not something you can do on your own. I do think it requires a support and a tribe, whether that looks like a women's circle, whether that looks like our online tribe or a course or a holding, whatever it looks like for you. I do think that some of this really, really hard stuff is not stuff you can expect yourself to do on your own, because we can't see our own stuff.
Yeah. And it's also to, especially like, you know, you're talking about the follow through and the carry through of what we commit to as well. I mean, and feeling held and supported as we make such massive changes too is so important, because very often you're the one feeling burnt out and your partner can't often identify with you and where you're at. So that is when you need more power behind you to back yourself in the changes that you're wanting to make, to remember that you are your, you know, best way forward. You are.
But that's congruence, right?
Yeah.
And as you and I talk about, and we do in online parenting all the time, is our children are always calling us into greater congruence. Greater congruence, which really means they will keep pushing a button, they will keep pressing an edge, they will keep showing up with a behavior until the way that we think and speak and act matches the way that they feel us.
Yeah.
If we are feeling one thing, but we are forcing, speaking, challenging, doing another, and they can't match the two, they will push it until they can match it.
Get it. Yeah.
And I find that fascinating because, again, relationship is a growth machine. Our children, our relationship with our children is the same. And there is nothing in this world wrong with saying, I'm feeling so angry right now, and I know it's because I'm not choosing X, or I'm not showing up for Y, or I need to be. And now I'm going to choose that. Yeah. So come with me. I will show and lead you the way. That's very different.
And also looking, you know, at all of the ways in which we say we can't have what it is we think we want, what it is we want, or, you know, that we need space to ourselves, but we can't because the children are always demanding of us, or we can't because we've got to do all of this other stuff. We are constantly saying those things out into the universe, and we're getting that feedback back to reinforce what we believe. But when we start to see, well, where can I have that pocket of time just for me? Where is it okay for my kids to see me do this? Where does that actually serve my relationship for me to do that? And we open up our perspective and our world and our opportunities when we start to really get good at asking those questions of ourselves.
And it's stacking the evidence. That's, I mean, that's looking for the pockets, creating, you know, what you appreciates, and being intentional with that. That is literally what you're talking about.
And I mean, even I'd got to the point this week where I was like, oh, like I've had 0 childcare, 2 kids constantly, husband working 7 days, I'm done. And it's like my kids knew that. And for an hour and a half, they played on their own together beautifully while I got to have some me time. And it's like I didn't even have to ask them to. I felt the congruence in myself enough for what I wanted to do, that they also somehow manage to do their own thing too. So I do think that even just feeling it in our bodies, what we need, can ripple out.
And not attaching story to that, because often it's the meaning that we attach to the emotions of that.
Yeah, like, I should do that, or, it's not good.
Or I'll do it, but I'm still feeling plagued by guilt while I'm doing it. So you're not really congruent.
No.
You're running a belief or a story there.
That I should be playing with them, and a good mother would do this, and
or it's not going to be enough, blah, 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 blah. Like there's so much that we run with it, which is where the gold is actually at. And I agree with you. I think it's also because it's easy. I still have to self-check my own belief patterns with that with my fourth. So she's 14 months and super busy. Like 14 months is, I had forgotten.
I can remember, like Sylvie was just pulling everything. Everything. And I realized I've hit that stage where you clean up one mess and oh my God, there's three more. Yeah. Especially in your mid-reno. So you really, you don't even have stuff in spots. So she's just.
Oh, hello. And I was doing some president at my daughter's kinder, and we were doing enrollment day the other day. And bless her cotton socks, she was coming out from the garden and dropping these piles of dirt on the carpet in the kinder. Oh. And I would literally clean up one pile and I would look around and there was three more. Oh my God. It was like they were breeding. And I was like, oh, I forgot this stage.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, it's a phase. If you're there, you do get through it. But it did make me realize in my head, I can easily run. There's no time. I don't have any time. There's no time. I don't have any time. I can easily loop myself back on that. And the funny thing is we will always consume our time with our things in our top values. So if I'm not conscious with creating and carving out time for A, B, and C, my family will literally consume that entire time.
Yeah, of course. Of course they would.
So this is, sure, no one's got any time. It doesn't matter if you have one child or you have four like me or you run a business or you're working or you're not working. Doesn't matter. Yeah. None of it actually matters because we all have time that is filled by our top values unless we're consciously carving out time for other stuff.
Yeah.
So I could easily run this story of I have no time. No, Julie, that's bullshit. And so I have to remind myself constantly, breathe in. Okay, you're feeling like you've got no time. What is it that you're feeling like is not, what's the need that's not getting met right now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's this. All right. So have the conversation, speak it out loud. I need X. Where am I creating that pocket? Great. Now I have those pockets. Oh, there's time. Oh, okay. Look at that half an hour that she just spent playing quietly with the pom-poms. Wow. So she's not like busy all of the time and I'm consumed by her all of the time. What about the hour you just spent on your phone on social media? What about the 5 coffees you just had over the course of a day?
Yeah.
Busy all day.
What about all that time that you've had to prepare food for your kids that, you made from scratch or whatever? We find time and we'll always tap into that.
But we will look for something in our world to reinforce the belief we're currently running unless we're consciously aware of that and are choosing to pattern interrupt. Like I just find that fascinating because we are so programmable and we program ourselves.
Yeah, we do. We do.
Amazing.
And I think, as humans we can think we're so intelligent. Oh my God, like in so many ways we're just like hamsters running on a wheel, on our own wheel of creation and beliefs.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So let's bring it back, Bridge.
Yeah.
I feel like we've gone off topic again.
Oh, we probably have.
Burnt out by love. All right. What do we want to say about this? What do you want to leave with?
I think I actually do believe in, making the feelings that come up when we get to this place as okay. Like part of our growth and of managing, our nervous system, which essentially so much of our growth is how much can my nervous system handle? How much can I integrate of my world? And I think when we get to these places of burnout or of extreme emotion or challenge, I think it's like the buttons that we get with our kids, like it's almost like saying to us, can feel this more. Can you feel here? What if you stayed here and felt it all until it wasn't so painful anymore? And listen to what's coming back when you feel those feelings. And I think that that's when we can get our greatest clarity and path forward and through the burnout, is when we're willing to feel what that feels like in our bodies and in our hearts. Because, you're not on this path if you don't deeply value your motherhood and your children and the families that you're creating. And burnout doesn't mean that you aren't doing a good job, or that you don't value your kids, or
that it's too much.
Or that it's too much, or that you can't handle it, or you don't have capacity. It's a feedback to help you grow. And I think that we find that growth when we're willing to stay with the discomfort, which, is one of the greatest tasks, I think, in an age where there is, a multitude of ways to numb and distract from that discomfort, to make it someone else's fault, to hop on social media and ignore it, to eat something, to distract ourselves. I mean, there's a zillion ways, but I think it's really worthwhile to feel into the feelings and notice your judgment of the feelings in yourself as you go into that place, so that then you can pave your way out of it. I don't think that we speak enough about the value of going through that journey of feeling. It's like just last week, I noticed that I've been flicking off in anger way more than I have been. And I realized that underneath that was hurt and sadness, and I wasn't giving myself active opportunity to feel that. So I knew I was hopping in the car for like a 20-25 minute drive, and I thought, you know what, I am going to create a pathway. And this is also because I had no, like, in inverted commas, time just for myself to journey this. So kids in the car, looked on Spotify, sad songs, found a killer playlist of really sad songs, and I put it on, and I just like sobbed for like 20 minutes with my kids in the back, who were both saying, "Mom, like, you okay?" And I was like saying to them, yeah, like, I am okay. I'm just feeling really sad, and I've got lots of sad feelings that need to come out. So I'm using this time to have a really good cry. It's really good for me to cry right now, and it's really good to let our tears out, and that's what I'm doing. And my daughter didn't really get it. She kept asking, what's wrong, and my son really got it, because we have enough conversations around feelings and try to give as much presence as we can to allowing feelings to move through us. That wasn't an unusual thing or something for him to feel scared about. And so I think making that purposeful and making that meaningful for ourselves, and making it okay when we feel like we drop our bundle or, are not coping. I mean, I think that that's part of the spectrum of being human, is allowing that. And it's, if we're judging that, why are we judging that? And where did that come from, that judgment? Because you don't need to continue to carry that. You just don't. You can just let it go and allow more.
Allow more. I love so much about that story.
Yeah.
It's like divine. But I think you're totally right. I really do. I love it. I love it.
So, yeah.
Allow yourself more.
What would it be to allow? What would it be like to allow yourself more?
What would that look like? What would that feel like?
Yeah.
What is it that your body is yearning for? What are the conversations you could have? What is the voice that could be heard that's currently not, in order to create that? Because that's where the gold is. The end goal, the need, is kind of secondary to what you must go. It's like the heroine's journey, right? You've got to go on the journey before you reach the golden fleece.
Yeah. But the journey is
the whole point.
Is all of it, really.
So we would love you to connect with us on nourishingthemother.com.au, Nourishing the Mother on Instagram, Facebook and Pinterest. We really adore your communications. So if you've got a topic suggestion, or you would love to just share with us, your yes and nodding in your car or whatever as you're listening, or something that happened in your world that's amazing, or even just some heartfelt gratitude, we adore hearing that in some small way our conversations are having a ripple in your world.
Yeah.
So please private message us or email us, and we promise we read every single one of them, and we'll write back to you.
We love it. And to connect with you, Jules,
is thepleasurenutritionist.com, and you, Brit,
suburbansandcastles.com.
And we would love you to check out our online programs. So nourishingthemother.com.au/online programs. They are lifetime access, which means you can join up anytime to begin digesting content. And as soon as you as soon as you dive up, I don't know what I'm saying here. Join. You get access to our members-only Facebook group, which is where we're having daily facilitation conversations on everything we talk about in the podcast, really. And then you're invited into as many live rounds as you like. So that's sensuality, sexuality, aligned parenting, and loathing to loving program. So please check them out at online programs. So
remember to nourish the woman to rock the family.
And we will see you next week when we continue to peel back the layer on your mothering journey.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.